Hello, everybody. Hello. My name is Connor Self. My pronouns are he, him. I want to welcome you to our first ever AceCon. This is an event celebrating asexuality, what it means to be asexual, our experiences, stories, how we can lift each other up. Um, During this convention, I'll let it be said, we will be sharing some pretty deep and personal topics. What is true for us, it may not be true for you. It may not be true for each other, even here on the panel. Um, we want to keep the space safe. We will be providing links to different resources that you can utilize. Uh, with the exception of myself, your panel, we are not therapists or psychologists. We cannot provide you any sort of health advice, but we do want to encourage you to listen and utilize those resources. In addition to the resources that are going to be shared, I would like to point you, if you feel like you really need to speak with somebody, to a couple hotlines that you may find helpful. Those hotlines include, if you're in the United States and Canada, 988. If you are in the UK, we encourage you to contact the Samaritans hotline. The number for the Samaritans hotline is, hold on one moment, 116-123. That is 116-123. And with that, I would like to open up the conversation by allowing our wonderful panelists to share who they are. We will start with first person on my screen is April. So April.
Hi, hello, that's me. I'm April. Uh, 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 Everywhere at April Raygun. I'm she, her. I'm also Ace. Yay! That's what we're all here for today. What are we? We didn't go over what we should do in the intros. Yeah, I'm Ace. I think it's a little bit more fluidy, and today I'm more Ace than I was maybe 6 months ago, and a little less Demi than I was a year ago. But who knows what's gonna happen in 6 months? I'll probably still be Ace, but it sometimes changes to Demi. We never know.
And next, we'll pass it to Darby. Darby, please introduce yourself.
Hey, my name is Darby, otherwise known as Chaotic Darby on the internet. I use she, her pronouns. I I too sense that there's a common theme between all of us, and perhaps I as well am follow somewhere on the asexual spectrum. It's incredible.
You too?
I know it's funky fresh. Up in this biz, yeah.
Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, y'all. I'm Alyssa, pronouns they, them, at A Disaster Career on Twitter and Hive, etc. And I thought that I got to be the ace token, and I'm really sad about everyone else here on the panel. um, but I am, yeah, also queer, trans, polyam, happy to talk about the intersections of those identities, mixed POC. And that's me.
And we are happy you are you. Next on the screen, I've got Ray. Ray, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hello, I'm Ray. You can find me at Red Mage Ray over the interwebs. Mostly do TTRPG stuff and throwing out retweets and stuff to cool people doing cool stuff in the space. Weirdly enough, I also fall on the ace spectrum. Currently rolling with Demi, but gender is complicated, sexuality is complicated, and you never come out once. You come out like a million times until you're like, oh no, this is definitely what I am. And then a year later, you're like, maybe.
I'm Stan, and I was wrong. I'm Stan.
Yeah,
Wrong song.
Exactly. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, definitely on the ace spectrum. Pronouns, he, they, she. Don't really mind which. Just mix them up.
So thank you, Ray. And then last introduction for this panel, Brent, if you wouldn't mind letting people know who you are.
Hi, hello, that's me. My name is Brent. My pronouns are he, him. And you are not going to believe this, but I am also on the asexual spectrum, currently identifying as demisexual. I know. What are the odds?
Incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm gonna go buy a lottery ticket after this. Mostly known as Dorkler Canada on all the socials, and I'm heavily involved in the TTRPG space, both as a player and GM and as a freelance editor.
All right. And to finish up introductions, I'm your moderator, which means I'll mostly be listening and sending questions. My pronouns are he, him. I am a mental health therapist during the day. In the evening, I'm a content creator for TTRPGs. You can follow me on Twitter, where I talk a lot about holistic and mental health, share pet pics, and talk about gaming. I am at the Healer DM on Twitter. There are a few things that we're going to talk about today, and I do want to share those with you. We are going to be talking about a number of different topics. They include: what is asexuality really? How asexuality can look, how it can look the same, how it can look different, how validating asexual experiences helps, how we can tell stories with ace representation, what are some examples of ace representation that resonate with the panel, what is asexual erasure, and how can we avoid and end it? There are certain things that we won't necessarily be touching on in this conversation today. There was a conversation that happened last night about neurodiversity and asexuality. I would encourage people to go to that panel, to that recording, if you wish to learn more about it. We're not really going to be touching on those topics to show respect to the people that spoke on it yesterday. We might be mentioning areas of intersectionality, but our focus is going to be a little bit different because we also have some great panels on that, and we encourage you to watch those. We don't want to take their voice. If you have questions, I encourage you to put them in Twitch chat. My job as moderator is to read through those questions and funnel some of them to the panel. The panel may not, and very likely is not, monitoring the chat. They're attending to each other. So feel free to put those questions in chat, and I will do my due diligence and get those across. Please know that these are people that very likely to you are strangers. They're going to be speaking about very personal experiences. They do not have to answer any of your questions. They are not here to perform for you. If you become really rude in chat, we will airlock you like an extra in Babylon 5. That's all I'm going to say. And with that, let's go ahead and get going with the first topic. What is asexuality really? Like, not only from a clinical standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. And Alyssa, I'm going to pass that microphone to you.
Oh God, please no, don't start with me. Can I popcorn into someone else first?
Okay, punting to Darby. No!
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. What if you were going to define asexuality really, what is it?
Oh wow, yes, I'm very prepared for this question. I've forgotten how to speak. Okay, here we go. Brain, just yes, breathe. I've found it best when trying to describe asexuality to my friends and other people who are not familiar with asexuality, or being like, hey, I am Bazinga, hello, this is me, introducing myself yet again. Asexuality as a lack is the word that I tend to use because it makes sense to translate to people, but like talking about how when people experience attraction towards people, asexuality is the lack of sexual attraction towards people, and that is a wide spectrum. That can be you are not sexually attracted to people until you get to know them, you are not sexually attracted to people just point blank. It's a wide spectrum that is separate from romantic feelings, or can be separate from romantic feelings, and that yeah, that's how I boil asexuality down in like a not great way, but
Oh no, you really I think you nailed that, Darby. Would anybody like to add to that?
I shall. I don't know why I put my hand up. I'm like, can I talk, please? Went back to school for a second then. Um, yeah. I think that Darby really kind of nailed it on the head when they were talking about the fact that Ace is a spectrum. Um, that's that kind of language has been used definitely a little more over the last couple of years when we're talking about asexuality and a romance. You'll hear a lot of people just say, "Oh, I'm aspec." You know, I'm somewhere on that spectrum. But as tends to happen sometimes with that kind of language, people will hear it and not really understand what we mean by aspec. So yeah, like the fact that asexuality and aromance is this huge spectrum of different feelings and experiences and thoughts. For some people, you know, at the very end of the spectrum, one side it's like, nope, I am not interested. I experience no sexual attraction, no desire to experience sexual attraction, no desire to. If you're on the aromantic side of things, it's like, okay, I just don't feel romance. You know, that's not something that I'm interested in. And then on the other side, it's like there's an asterisk to all of my relationships. Basically, it's like, okay, I can experience this kind of attraction, but there's like this little asterisk at the end where there's caveats. There's other things that pop up. So, for example, demisexual, having that emotional and intelligent connection with someone and having to develop that over time, that is an aspect, and there's many other identities that fall under that. It is not just robots that don't feel anything. No, we none of that.
Thanks for adding, Ray. Would anybody else like to talk about what asexuality means to them? Brent, you look like you have a thought.
Well, I was going to say, like, my experience discovering that I was asexual, and then more specifically demisexual, was a very late one. And so for myself personally, asexuality came as a great relief. I didn't discover it until about that I was demisexual until about 5 years ago. I grew up through my entire life, you know, unaware that that was a possibility and that that's what I was. And so that engendered a lot of confusion and a lot of, you know, there was a period where, you know, there was a several year period where, for instance, I was honestly convinced I was just sociopathic, that I didn't have, that I was incapable of these feelings. And of course, anyone who studies sociopathy for even a second will tell you that the fact that you are introspective about sociopathy is an indicator that you are not a sociopath. But it doesn't, like, not having access to that definition and even even that context was something that was very, so when I, you know, came to understand that I was demisexual, it came as a great relief. It was like, you know, a burden I wasn't aware I was carrying had been lifted, and a lot of things fell into context that way. So.
I don't want to take anybody's voice. Alyssa or April, if you would like to add what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, just adding on to what Ray was saying, I think that the idea of asexuality being a spectrum is super important and useful. And I identify as sort of gray ace umbrella term because I think that my asexuality is sort of very fluctuating over time and sort of over myself and as I learn new things about myself. And I think that the utility of those sort of wider terms can be really strong. Like Ferris mentioned in the chat, and like Brent was saying, you know, having a name for something and the relief of having a name for something is so real. And I also think that there's a lot of utility to allowing for some like flexibility within that definition, and for, you know, not gatekeeping terms and allowing people to define and experience their asexuality in ways that aren't like exactly the same as yours are. And that's still valid.
There are so many different ways to be ace. Conveying to people that we exist on a spectrum, and that each of us can be different. That human sexuality exists on a spectrum in general, but asexuality, in particular, our topic today, is important for folks to learn. April, did you want to add anything?
I think everyone kind of said it real well. I think another fun thing of asexuality that a lot of people don't realize is not only do you not understand if you are sexual, I don't understand sometimes if I'm attracted to men or women. Not because I'm more straight or gay or bisexual than I was last week. It's just I don't feel attraction most of the time, and then I'm like, oh shit, did I become straight? Oh no. And they're like, oh no, there it is, okay, that's a woman who is attractive. I can understand this again. Okay, we're good. But I think that's a lot of the thing that kind of gets missed with asexuality, is it also affects the rest of the sexuality. So it's not just we don't like sex. We are constantly trying to figure out if we even like people and what that looks like.
That was amazing insight for those who are viewing today who don't personally identify as asexual, or don't have friends who've talked to them about it. That could be pretty meaningful conversation. Now that we've talked a little bit about what that term means to us, to others, let's talk a little bit about how it might look for those people out there who maybe know ace people but haven't figured out that they're ace yet, or individuals who are questioning, is this who I am? What might that look like to just people, either casual acquaintances or close friends, family?
I'll go. I was still unmuted, I realized. I think asexuality looks like this. We're all ace. We all look different. We all act different. We all feel different. And I think that's an important thing you're going to learn this weekend is look at the amount of people. Until a few years ago, I thought I was broken and I was the only one. Literally until last year did I find out some of my closest friends are also ace. And I had a good old cry about it. I was like, oh, we're not the only ones. So ace looks like us. And it's not defined by, oh, I'm in a relationship, I'm not ace anymore. No, they're still ace. It's something that you learn. And it's like you can't, like, gay people look different. No, they don't. Ace people look like us. We're all ace in this room. And it doesn't look broken. I'm tired of the, sorry, I'm gonna go rant again. I'm tired of the media stereotype that the ace person is somebody broken that needs to be fixed. We're getting better representation now in media, but for the longest time, and I think that's one of the reasons I found it so hard to find out who I was, is because media made it look broken. If the ace person always, like, they find the sexual love interest in the end and they're fixed now. No. If an ace person gets in a relationship, they're not fixed, they're still ace. They're just in a relationship. It's like if a bi person is dating a man, a bi female dating a man, they're not hetero all of a sudden, they're still bi. Same with ace. Sorry, that was my rant.
No, that's a good rant. From a mental health standpoint, a lot of those stereotypes of ace people being broken comes from a very, very cishet male-centered universe, and portrayals of largely at the time public portrayals of women becoming cold. It was very much a misogynistic sort of thought, and unfortunately, those thoughts sort of linger. If men obviously feel all sexual attraction to everything, and that's completely normal and encouraged. Don't tell anybody if you don't. Also, women, there's something wrong with you if you don't, and we're going to put you in mental health treatment, even if you're fine with the way you are, right? Thank you for bringing that up because that needed to be said, April. Absolutely. Would somebody else like to contribute? It looks like Darby. You look like
Yeah. I was just what April was saying reminded me. There's a show, a British show called Sex Education. And that has this really wonderful clip that I forget the actress's name, but she was in the X-Files, I think.
Gillian Anderson.
Yes, as Scully. But she's this like a mental health educator for the school, especially for sex ed. But she ends this girl comes and she's like, I think I'm broken. There's something wrong with me. Da, da, da. She's like, I just don't feel anything when I think about these things. It's like I'm surrounded by this huge feast, but I'm just not hungry. And then Gillian Anderson says, you know, have you ever heard of asexuality? You know, there's nothing wrong with this feeling. This is who you are. Like, this just the way some people are. Sex, and she ends it with saying, sex doesn't make us whole, so how could you be broken? So I really resonate with that clip where it's because for at least for me with sex, sometimes I'm like, sex, gross, icky, fluids, no touchy. I like don't want to even like I have a partner. I don't even want to be remotely like sexual for a day. But then some days are like, you know. But it's a spectrum. Some days are on, some days are off, some days are somewhere in the middle. It's okay to feel somewhere anywhere about sex. You can hate sex, you can like love doing the hanky panky sideways tango. It is a-okay because asexuality is a broad spectrum. It's okay to be anywhere. And yes.
If it was called hanky panky sideways tango as I was growing up, I might have changed my sexuality.
Yeah. Same.
You do the hanky panky and you turn it all around. That's what it's all about.
Would anybody else like to share a little bit about what they think asexuality could look like?
I did want to kind of directly piggyback off of a couple of the points that have been brought up, mainly because, and I'm not going to out them, I'm not going to mention who, but someone very close to me identifies on the ace spectrum as well. And there's been a few conversations that we've had about certain things and where they fit. So asexuality looks queer. Like, being ace, identifying as ace, is in and of itself a queer thing, a queer identity, and it doesn't matter where your sexuality tends to go, where that dial kind of lands for you. By being someone who is ace, by identifying as ace, that in and of itself is a queer identity. And you never have to sit there wondering if just because you're ace, does that make you queer? Like, that you can identify however you want to identify. You can embrace that identity if you want to. And the nice thing about being LGBTQIA+ is, one, the A is right there, and two, it is a broad umbrella. Someone mentioned a little bit earlier about not policing terms and things like that, and that's incredibly important in this kind of space, because ace, the A is there. You belong in that umbrella just as much as anyone else who is in that umbrella. And yeah, I wanted to kind of mention that's enough. Being ace is enough. Being yourself is enough. And however much, that's awful English. Whatever amount of that identity you want to embrace or not embrace is entirely up to you, and no one else can make that decision for you. So make that journey on your own time. As you just kind of heard, there's some of us here who knew pretty early. There's some of us who didn't even really know that ace was an identity until later in our lives. Like, yeah, ace is queer. Sorry.
No, that's perfectly okay. It definitely falls into that greater alphabet soup umbrella terms. It's a queer identity because it represents a way of looking at sexuality and gender, an identity of sexuality and gender that doesn't fall within that normal sort of curve, and we celebrate that.
I do want to say one thing real quick. I'm tired of people telling me that A stands for ally. That's bullshit. If you come at me with that A stands for ally, get the fuck out of my letters. If you're heteronormative, get the fuck out of my letters. That's my A. We earned that A. We got told we were broken for years. That A belongs to me, motherfucker. Oh, sorry. That A
That's our
belongs
one.
to us.
That's
we
fine.
get that letter.
We went this close.
I don't know if you can. You may appreciate my T-shirt. I don't know if you can see it in frame, but it is heteronormativity in this economy.
Oh my god, that shirt's amazing, and I need it.
Yeah. Just touching on what has been said before about that I mean, Ace looks like all of us. I would also say, because this is something that like I personally have experienced and maybe other people have as well, ace people can flirt. Ace people don't have to flirt, and there are definitely ace people who can't flirt and won't understand you flirting, but ace people can flirt. It's a thing that happens. I'm happy to flirt because I love language. Like I love playing around with language and being very specific about what different words mean and the effect they have on people and things like that. So part of that is like, I recite and write sonnets of my own, and I love playing around with those words, and I love saying those words to people and seeing the effect they have. So, and bantering back and forth, like that's all great. Doesn't mean I want to do sorry, I've forgotten the wording for it already, the sideways tango, the horizontal sideways tango. Maybe it just means that I want to spend like 20 minutes, 20 minutes making you blush, or 20 minutes of you making me blush. Who knows? Like, right? It's just, it's as valid a reaction or an action as any other. So don't be down on your ace friends because they're flirting. Embrace it.
Yeah, that was also going to be sort of the point I brought up, is that, yeah, I'm seeing it less now, which I'm grateful for. But the idea of like the ooh, small innocent ace doesn't understand flirting or sexuality at all. Like, I mean, if he doesn't understand sexuality is maybe true for some people, but like it's certainly not true for everyone. And absolutely some of my like vocally thirstiest friends are ace, and it's wonderful.
Yo,
That part exactly. Some of my ace friends are the thirstiest people you will ever meet.
they will write the spiciest fan fiction, like the most like hanky panky, like whoa, the kind of stuff of like, whoa, oh boy, whoa, there we go. It's the spice that I've ever seen all like Aces people. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't understand flirting, but that's not because I'm ace. It's because there's so much situational awareness that I'm just like, wow, that person wants to be friends. Like, totally miss. I had somebody literally say, hook up or not. And I went, wow, they want to hang out as platonic friends. That's not because I'm ace. It's because I'm like, wow, yes. Platonicism. Friendship. I only found out because they apologized for hitting on me, and I went, what?
And they lived together for 40 years as roommates.
Yeah.
But also, don't forget that sometimes we're the horniest people in the world, and then we won't be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, because I've had friends go, oh, like they'll fake flirt. I'm like, it's not today. They're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, it's not. Yeah, I flirted with you real hard a week ago. Not for anything, because that's what we do sometimes. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean the next week I'm no longer your friend or no longer think it's funny. It's just this week I was less flirty.
Hmm.
But then saying, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" That don't never do that
Yeah.
to your ace friends.
What's wrong with you? Your attitude. Like,
What's wrong with you? You are wrong with me. Please leave.
no.
Yeah.
Correct this vibe. The vibe is foul. Does not pass the vibe check.
So we will be going to break in about 20 minutes. I just want to remind the audience again, if you have questions, feel free to put them in chat. I'm happy to pass them along to our panelists. The next topic that we wanted to talk about is an incredibly heartfelt one. How can validating ACE experiences help?
What I just said, don't act weird when your friend goes from like, if you have an ace friend, realize that they're kind of gonna be wibbly wobbly on the spectrum. Like some days we really are into it, some days we're not, but never make them feel bad about it. All their feelings are valid. All our feelings are valid. And when you don't treat it that way or start treating it negatively, that's one of the things that leads to a lot of ace people feeling broken. It's what in media leads to all that. Just treat them like people. That's it. And then we know we can be people.
Darby, you look like you want to add to that.
Yeah. The I've when I discovered I was asexual, pretty much like all of my high school friends said, yeah, we already knew that. Like, we told you a few months ago, you did not catch up on the program, and I went, eh? Like, I was having this mind-blowing revelation, and you all had this revelation about me 2 months beforehand. But it was validating because they had all done this research and they all supported who I was and how I was from the get-go, which what was hard to the validation was good because it helped ground me when I had very unvalidating experiences. The first person that I ever like had any sort of romantic slash like pseudo doing not doing the do but like getting there didn't understand that I was like, I really don't want to do the do because just not my vibe, not my jam. And they said something that was like super not chill of them and to try to pressure me into doing it. And that was it felt bad, like super like really bad. The having that validation though that I was who I was normal, what I was feeling was okay, and it was okay to be who I was important to me. Just being able to argue with those thoughts and that doubt that I then experienced was to be like, no, I am me, there's nothing wrong with me. And that person was a jerk. Like, they wanted something from me that I told them was a boundary, and instead of accepting that, they instead tried to push my boundary and then invalidate who I was. And they're not my friend if they did that. So I have found validating ace experiences and asexuality to be just very grounding. It's important in general, just point blank, but just from that was the most important experience for me, was just being able to tie it back and be like, I am real, like, in every way.
Ray, you look like you want to add to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to apologize in advance because I use analogies a lot because it helps me frame my mind, and I'm sorry. But sexuality and identity are already incredibly difficult to navigate. It's very much like being handed, like a video game that you've never played before and being told like, okay, go. You have nothing. You have no instruction manual. You don't know what you're doing. Trying to navigate being ace in that space in a world that is so, one, still very heteronormative, and two, very overtly sexualized. It's like being handed the totally wrong controller and being told go. Like trying to play Fortnite with a flight stick. It's like you just it's your tool, like what you yourself, you are correct. You are, you are not broken. But the world is so difficult to engage with. The world is so difficult to reach out and to grab what you actually need to grab, to find the information that you need to find, to get those interactions and to be able to learn what you're supposed to be doing. And it's those moments, those validating moments, whether it be in media like TV or video games or comics or even just interpersonal moments, having those friends that understand your identity that you can reach out to, having those resources, those, the charities or blogs or people that share similar or the same identities, having those small moments, it's like refreshing, but it's also informative. It's a lot easier to engage with the world if you can find little tutorial figures in the game that are telling you, hey, so this is how the world works. And yeah, like it really is just these small little beacons, these small little islands out in the ocean that really help you to figure out where you're going, what you're doing, and make Ace a little less confusing, because it's a hell of a journey for, I'm sure a lot of people here and a lot of people on all the other panels can agree that discovering being Ace is difficult in this world. It's a bit of a pain. Anything that we can go ahead and kind of grasp onto is going to help us make that a little less difficult. Yeah.
Alyssa, you have that eager eye. What did you add?
Yeah, no, I think sort of building off an earlier point in there, the idea of sort of complicated intersections and the way that, yeah, it's hard to figure things out in the world that we live in. So, like, my first real relationship was with a woman, and I knew that I was queer, and I never had a like, oh wait, no, am I straight? Like, is that why this feels like weird for me? But there was a lot of difficulty in terms of like relating with her physically and having like me having these latent trans feelings and her like treating me with like I was a woman. And then that intersected with the sort of aceness being like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with this, but I can't untangle exactly why it is. And the answer is both. It is all the things. Multiple things can be true at once, but sort of sorting that out and having space and grace to do that and allowing folks to sort of question and explore is so, so valuable and validating.
Yeah, definitely that space and grace. That just lets people be in your presence. It's priceless, isn't it? Brent, did you want to add to this portion of the conversation?
Sure. I'll just like piggyback off a little bit of what Ray said. I just from my own experience growing up is that being validated as an asexual would have saved me so many bad relationship decisions, because like I was a teen and in my 20s, like sort of in the 80s and like late 80s, early 90s, and the rudimentary sex education we received in school did not even touch topics of asexuality. It was essentially like, this is what sex looks like, and it's bad unless you're married. And that was the extent of that. So because that validation wasn't there, because that wasn't even an option on my horizon at that time, I just, you make a lot of bad relationship decisions. Like I made a lot of decisions around like the assumption that, well, okay, obviously something is wrong with me because all of my peers seem to have figured it out. So I'm just going to follow what, so, my peers tell me, media tells me, movie and television tells me that this is the type of person I should be attracted to. So these are the type of relationships I'm going to pursue. And that is awful, for one. Not just for me, but also for the people that I'm pursuing, because I have no real interest in them. And there's no way they can have a real interest in me, because I'm not presenting as authentic. So yeah. So I mean, just to say that, if you are still experiencing that, if you haven't necessarily come to that understanding in your own life, I encourage you to find that validation, because it is life-changing, and it will lead you to make better decisions. Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to thank the panel for contributing to this conversation. As we've gone through this, these experiences, again, they're incredibly personal, and you are giving some emotional labor to this, and thank you so much for that. Before we go to break, for our first break, I would like to thank, in addition, the other contributors in the background, the moderators, producers, the team that made the overlay. So many people contributed to this conversation. We see you, we appreciate you, and we lift you up as well. So I want to encourage everybody to please take a break, because physical health is mental health. Why don't y'all move your bodies a little bit, go drink of water, go to the bathroom. Self-care is self-care. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. We'll continue this conversation with an incredibly important and fun topic that we had sort of planned, and it was asked about in the chat. Thank you for that. We're going to discuss what representation for ACE looks like, and heroes, other people that we've identified as ACE in our community, that or people that have identified ACE in popular stories that we want to that resonate with us. So we'll be back in 10. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you took that moment to take care of yourself. We're going to hop right back into the conversation with some important topics that we picked that we really want to share with you. We also got a break over the question over the break that we want to address. If y'all have any questions and you want them to be addressed by our panel, I encourage you to put them in the Twitch chat. I will be passing them along to the panel. Again, the panel may not be monitoring that conversation, instead attending to the conversation and to each other. So please put that in the chat, and I will pass it along. Before we get going with the next topic of conversation, though, there was, you might have missed it, an amazing conversation that was happening during break at the beginning, and I want to give our panelists, if you'd like to share any of that conversation, feel free.
Sorry, my brain blanked for a second, and I forgot I was part of that conversation, and had to rewind my brain. So there was in my head. I had said that I related to what Brent said, and didn't really, never really added that together, because I like to forget about most of my exes. That a lot of what I did was date because it was what I was supposed to do, and then overcompensated because I thought I was supposed to want all the sex. And so it was a talk about how, as ACE, we tried to overcompensate so we don't let the people around us know we're broken, because media told us we were broken. And how, God damn, stop it. How, God, how we fix that?
Yeah, and along with that as well, just the number of relationships that that I have ended up in simply because, like you said, they showed an interest, and my friends like them. I should like this, so date now. And that's not great, to put it mildly. So yeah, just having that validity would have saved decades of poor dating decisions, and saved everyone a lot of heartache.
All right. Well, I would like to have us move to the next topic, one that was asked about in the questions. So one we definitely want to address. Uh, we want to talk a little bit about ace representation in the media. What does it look like? How can we tell stories with great ace representation? And then maybe let's talk about some of those examples, some of those ace heroes that resonated with us personally. And April, you're in, like you are like
I was
pressing, you're
excited.
like, let's do this.
I think one of the really good ones is actually relates to what we were just talking about, which I got excited. In one of my favorite ace representations in media, if you've ever played the game Outer Worlds, haha, you know where I'm going.
That was gonna be mine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I stole it. There is a character that you could add on to all the things I missed. There's a character whose side quest to get them to become friends is you have to get them a date with this person they like, and that's okay. But as you go through it, you actually, oh man, I don't want to spoil it. It's an older game. You guys, it's been a while. You find out they come out to you as Ace. And the creator of this character also is Ace and made sure that in the writing of the game, they give you no option to be bigoted. And it gives you the option to like relate to them and comfort them and understand what Ace means to them and how and then the relationship. And actually, like when I played that, I was like, oh shit. Because it gives you that moment to reflect and relate. And when you are trying to figure that out, it's that helps. And they did that with another character that I really love that I'm gonna steal from someone else, I think, but I get to. Dusa from Hades. That game. Uh, you get to romance all the side characters, and as you go through her story, at the end she's like, "I like you, but friends, yes, let's kind of keep it." And at no point does the relationship really. They're like, yeah, cool. Like he's just as excited to keep that relationship with you as she is with him, and it's just one of the few moments in the game where she calms. She's a very neurotic, nervous character, and it's a few moments that you actually see her like, oh, cool. And that's why I love her too. And I've already done two, so I feel like if I keep going, I'm going to steal someone else's, so I'm going to stop. But it's just the reason they're important is because the characters all accept them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just to piggyback on the Deucer really quick, yeah, the way that the main character Zagreus reacts to that is just lovely. He's like, oh, okay, do you want me to like back off? And she's like, no, I really love being with you. I just not romantically or sexually. And he's like, okay, let's like just be friends forever then. And it's really nice.
For myself, the one that I'm going to choose, and this is a series of books that I highly recommend to everyone, not just people who are on the ace spectrum, although I believe ace people will find a particular comfort in the character of Murderbot. It is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and it is my go-to comfort book or series of books. I think I've read through the entire series up to this point like 7 or 8 times, because it's just what I go back to, and I need that sort of comforting good story without and it's really good ace representation for all of the same reasons that that April gave with the examples you gave. Is that not only do you see like a sort of a fully developed, still questioning, like sort of ace character in Murderbot, but the people around it are accepting of that. Like they're like, yeah, no, we want to make sure you're comfortable, and that's not an experience it had previously, and it's a very wonderful to sort of see that experience of finding comfort in your identity mirrored in fiction. So
Ray, would you like to contribute yourself?
Yeah, so April kind of mentioned a little bit one of the ones that I was going to bring up, but I just want to kind of piggyback off that because I also love Parvati very, very much. Um, the thing that made her a little more special for me is not only is she explicitly ace, she is also explicitly lesbian and ace, which I think is very important. Having that queer representation in asexuality, um, a little more kind of openly than a lot of media has done before. We kind of mentioned it in a few of our kind of backstage chats, and I'm not going to go too far into it. But very much this idea of a lot of previous ace media has been very kind of heteronormative. It's very much like, you know, yes, you are ace, but you are straight. You are this individual who has no feelings for this particular, you know, it's silly and complicated, and thankfully there's a lot better representation coming out more recently about that kind of thing. But yeah, having someone who is explicitly a queer femme who is into another queer femme who just so happens to be ace. It's a lovely representation. Speaking of that slight intersectionality as well, the other character, again in a video game that I was going to bring up, was Arcade Gannon from Fallout New Vegas, who is a queer character who is explicitly demi. And it's nice to just not have that be a big deal in a game like that. Like, it's very much brought up as a slight thing to the side that he confides in you at some point if you talk to him enough, and that's it. That's all there is. He's just a person who is also queer and also ace that is also in this world, who is traveling with you. And as much as stories like Parvati are important, where that aceness and that identity is on display and is handled in a way that is nice and in depth, I feel like the opposite is also true, where it's nice to see characters who just so happen to be ace. And that's not really kind of touched on. It's nice to have both sides of the spectrum. And yeah, those are the two that I was going to kind of bring up. And the only other one I was going to bring up was from a comic series. In Marvel Comics, there is a character called Gwenpool, who is also explicitly ace. Who, one, it's a fantastic comic series. If you haven't read it, you should definitely go ahead and check it out. Came out in like 2015, I want to say. But yeah, Gwenpool is explicitly ace, explicitly gray ace, actually. And the story kind of tackles them navigating the idea of kind of what we've touched on here. Like, what is a relationship? Am I getting into a relationship purely because I'm supposed to, or do I actually have some kind of interest in this individual? So yeah, you should definitely go ahead and check that out. It's a wonderful little series created by a few queer folks in the comic sphere. So yeah.
Would anybody else like to contribute any examples of great ace representation? Darby, you're like, ooh, me.
I last one in the row. I was struggling really hard to think of, because I don't watch a lot of TV, like movies, brain zero attention span. But what I do hyperfixate on are webcomics. There are so many, with like Webtoon becoming like super huge. But also there's a long history of webcomics in general. I was just reminded there are so many webcomics that I read that there are characters that are ace, whether explicitly stated or just like you can infer from context that this person is ace. Like Gunner Craig Court is this webcomic I've been reading since, like, it's been around since like 2009, which is like wild to me. But one of its main characters, uh she pretty much never expresses any romantic or sexual interest. Well, she's also a child, but no romantic interest in anyone ever. Like she's like, I'm chilling. Like I see my friend Kat. She's dating a guy. She's dating a girl. Cool. I'm vibing though. Like totally fine. And then thinking about like Namesake has like explicitly so many queer characters like all over the place. They're all pretty much all queer. And then thinking Muted was this webtoon. I think the main character I think I remember correctly, the main character is Ace, but also attracted to women. So she's like, it's like this great little intersection where the web comics are just this beautiful bloom of like queer exploration and queer representation that I like. Switch, love, love, love. And yeah, I read a lot of webcomics, and those have been great for me to just like read and experience because I'm a sucker for romance. I love romantic stuff so much. But not the sometimes the hanky panky stuff is fun to read, sometimes not. But I found like a lot of webcomics have been very inclusive towards like ace representation experiences. So like they'll have people like doing romance, and then it'll start leading like, oh, it's getting, maybe they're gonna do the spicy off camera, and they'll just have a discussion said they're like, I actually don't feel that way. Like sometimes yes, sometimes no. Yeah, sometimes good, sometimes yeah, da, da, da. And I'm like, I like this a lot. Yeah.
I have one more to throw in here, which I threatened to in the chat for last night's panel, but Los Spookies, which is a short, like I think 6 or 8 episodes Spanish language show on HBO. The main character, Ronaldo, is pretty explicitly ace. Like I read as Arrow Ace, and it's just a really lovely representation because he does not fall into that like robotic no human connections trope at all. Like he loves his friends, he's very close with his friends, and he adores the work that he does, which is setting up like little horror things. It's a very good show, you should watch it. And yeah, it's also like a show with a lot of good queer representation, and it's nice to see like non-white ace representation. So like everyone in the show is Latine, and it's, yeah, I adore it.
No say so, solely spookies. I recall him saying that over and over again in the show. It is a wonderful show. I highly recommend it. We've talked a lot about video games and television and books and webcomics and print comics. But a lot of us are RPG space folk as well. And there are wonderful representations out there in various media. I can speak for representation in the things I write. It's always very important. And I have portrayed one of my most important NPCs explicitly as joyously queer and very ace. Jenny Greenteeth eschewed all societal notions of what a relationship should look like, or what women's expectations of women should look like. And she's like, I'm going to reclaim my powerful femininity by, living my true self. And part of that means I'm not interested in getting with somebody else. And I'm going to go study my magic. And that's okay. You can find those representations out there. You just have to, sometimes you have to look for them a little bit, but they are there. They're there.
Every character I play is ace. That's kind of how I found out I was ace. I decided to make all my characters ace to make that everyone else's problem, and realized, oh, it's my problem. I'm ace. Shit. To the point, like, one of the big ones that really made me find out I was ace was I played Dusa in a Hades high school TTRPG, and we rewrote the ace rules for Monster Heart for my character, because I read the rules. I'm like, I don't like this. My character's ace. I don't want to follow these rules. Like, that's bullshit. We need to figure out what intimacy means for my character in this setting. And so, yeah, that's kind of what started me being like, I'm a problematic ace now. All my characters are ace. Because I literally had a couple people tell me that I relationship wrongs in game. And I was like, no. my characters are all ace, and I guess I never screamed that enough that you didn't realize that, but that's how they relationship.
I hate the ace rules in Monster Hearts. I
So do
understand.
I.
Like, I understand where they're coming from. It's basically like, instead of making connections, when people try to do that with you, you shut them down automatically instead. And it's like, I understand where it's coming from a genre point of view, in that like Monster Hearts is about messy, complicated relationships and being monstrous, but it's not a good feeling.
No, that's
Thirsty Sword
what you gotta.
Lesbians.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Thirsty Sword Lesbians has really lovely ace rules that are just like, oh no, you're making connections, but they're like not necessarily sexual. And it's
Yeah.
great. Like, you are not some sad robot shutting out all connections with people. You are like a full person who wants this like human feelings and human intimacy.
And
Just not necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, it was just much easier. Like, does your character feel like this was an intimacy moment? Like, not all intimacy is sexual.
Yeah.
And Monster Hearts makes it so you're only intimate if you're sexual. And that's why I think a lot of ace people have been afraid of that game. But if you just play with what you think your character's intimacy is, that's how you make that rule work, or that move work.
Yeah. I mean, one of the last characters that I made for Dungeons and Dragons, because I haven't played that in a while, is named Dunsany, who is a swashbuckler and is demisexual. And sadly, that has never come up in play, because Dunsany got played in a series of like charity one shots and things like that. But that is always the sort of the underlying drive, is that even in situations where someone may potentially be flirting, like another character or an NPC might be flirting with Dunsany's response to that is always like Labrador retriever like friendliness. And I call him, I nicknamed Dunsany my demisexual disaster himbo, because that is essentially just, yeah, he just wants to be friends. And maybe, I don't know, if we get in a long-term campaign, maybe something will happen, but up to that point, he is not your typical swashbuckler who is like, trying to get with it in every tavern they frequent. And there's something very refreshing and freeing about playing that at the table, which is wonderful.
Reason number 387 why TTRPGs are a fantastic way of self-discovery and self-expression.
I love it. I love this conversation so much. There was a great question that was asked in chat that sort of is an awesome segue to the next point that we had wanted to discuss today. So I'm going to repeat that question for you. With sex being such a prominent part of media and advertisements, that sexual representation. Do you all have any self-care exercises you like to do when you're having a day where you feel more on the sex repulse side of the spectrum and are exposed to sex in the media?
I watch cartoons. I watch a lot of cartoons. I like cartoons anyway. And there are days where I'm watching it, I'm like, why are they having sex again? Like, there's no point in this show, movie, why is this happening? And so sometimes I'll fast forward through those scenes. It's not plot relevant. I don't care. No hate on people who love those scenes. I don't care. And if it's not plot relevant, I'll just fast forward. I'll turn on cartoons. I'll go do something else. One of the fun things about when I finally realized I was ace, I was like, oh, it's cool if I don't care. It's cool to change the media or fast forward.
I think a lot about how in like movies or shows sometimes it's like they like these two characters mess up some plan because they're like, we must do, let us exchange the spits. I'm like, why? I just don't understand. Like, you can't just like, it's, where's the on off switch? Just like what? I don't understand. What are you doing? So I also very much like cartoons because like Steven Universe or Owl House. Owl House also with great Ace Arrow representation with little Claw Thorn. You know, emphasize non-sexual relationships for multiple reasons, but like it is very comforting to watch all that stuff and be like, yes, I know that they will not do the nasty, but I can enjoy the romantic schmutz.
I'm gonna lead on. Owl House, watch that. It has the first bisexual representation of a main character that is also not white.
Yes,
Bisexual POC main character who speaks in both English and Spanish.
Mhm.
Openly bisexual, has said men and women are attractive. One of the first bisexual kisses on a cartoon,
Yes.
and has the first non-binary main. I mean, it's a side character, but main side character that sticks around and is plot relevant.
Has a name like
And is non-binary ace, and they do such a. I'm so sorry we forgot to mention that they do one of the best jobs of representation I've seen in any media. I even name my cats after them. Like
Owl House.
watch Owl
Yes.
House
I'm a big Owl House fan. So
and be very angry that it got canceled. But watch everything.
yes.
Dana Terrence, also a great form of representation. They are the creator of Owl House and have been fighting for representation for a very long time. Sorry, that's my Owl House rant. It's like a trigger. You triggered my Owl House card.
You activated my Owl House card. The ace in my sleeve.
Oh.
I had to throw in one pun.
It's been a good run.
So, any other self-care tips if you feel like you're just being inundated by sex rich media and you're just not there for that day?
I create. I am very kind of proactive when it comes to moments when the dial kind of shifts towards that kind of I'm not really interested in seeing this. I jump in and create my own representation. One of the best ways I find, and again, this is personal, so pinch of salt and all that. As someone who does a lot of writing and TTRPGs and a lot of that kind of thing, the best way to make those characters that you're trying to represent that side of things, if you're sitting down making a character that is ace, it's complicated. We've already kind of established like there's a big spectrum, and one of the best ways is to revisit that character when you're feeling like you're in multiple places of that spectrum, because it adds depth. It adds your own actual lived experiences rather than accidentally creating a token of yourself. It's being able to kind of revisit that character sheet or revisit that NPC block and be like, okay, so I'm feeling a little more towards the very, very ace spectrum today. But I wrote this character when I was feeling more demi or more gray ace. So, okay, how do we, add this experience that I'm currently experiencing to my previous experience? And that helps me flesh out actual characters, an actual representation, rather than just grabbing onto a few key points that the world has told me that that's how Ace looks, I guess. It's a little harder for me to put this into words than I thought it was going to be when I started this point, but like being able to just sit down and create really helps you sort through your feelings and sort through your mind and really kind of filter out what is yours and what is the world turning around saying, no, this is what ace people look like. So yeah, I do stuff, I create, and that helps me sort through things.
Anybody else before we move on to the next thing?
I think maybe just the last thing I'll toss out there is a safety tool that I use at my TTRPG tables called the open table or the open door. And it is essentially that you are allowed to walk away at any point without explanation. If you need to leave, because your health and security and is more important than any game. So I would say the same thing for media that you're consuming. Be accepting that today is not the day to watch this. Tomorrow might be. So, you don't have to throw it away because it's not satisfying and it's not speaking to you today, or it's causing discomfort or anything. Just turn it off, walk away, go do something else. There is a reason why I have read, I think I said, like, the Murderbot Diaries like 8 or 9 times through, is because that is my go-to of like, all of this is a lot right now, and so I'm going to go and focus on this because this gives me comfort. So yeah, just, you don't have to engage with it, and you can be okay about not engaging with it. You can also be okay with, like, 2 weeks later you go to look at it and it's like, oh, actually today I love this is amazing. That is absolutely valid. You like what you like when you like it. So
All right, so the next topic of conversation, then we have another great question from the audience. So the last item on our agenda, we really want to discuss what asexual erasure is and what we can do to combat that. So would anybody like to talk about what it means and get us started with ideas on how to combat it?
I'd love to hop on it, I guess. Or not hop on it, depends on the mood. But asexual erasure is generally in a similar vein to like a lot of other queer erasure. It's denial of your existence, it's denial of your experiences, being told that you're abnormal or that there's something wrong with you, and that you need to be fixed in some way. I've also had, experiences where people told me asexuality is not a queer label. You're not queer for being asexual. Or this one was a fun one to hear in college, that asexuality is a white person's I did like only white people, like it's white people who want to be like queer use asexuality to like try and be like cool and in. And I heard this from a friend who didn't know I was asexual, and it was probably the most like heart-wrenching, or that actually is probably the most invalidating experience I ever had, was just like hearing that person just say that and like had a lot of vitriol for ace people, because for a lot of the visible ace people on my campus were white. Our ace community was a majority POC, but the ones that, because most of us were like, y'all are already vocal, like go ham, like we give you, we are checking and you are saying the things that we want you to say anyways. But it was rough. Asexual erasure sucks, don't do it. Like, I forget who said it earlier today, but asexuality is queer because it goes, I may have been right, it goes against the norm. Like, it is, because it is not heterosexual, like heteromantic, like because it goes against that, it is a queer identity. And to not open the door to this wide spectrum of experiences, because then, I feel like asexuality opens up a really important conversation about the separation of romantic attraction versus sexual attraction, because I'm romantically attracted to lots of people, big like romance fan over here, but sexually attracted probably not as zilch. Some days maybe, some days a lot, some days not. it really shuts down a lot of important conversations, and it makes people feel that they are not, that there's something wrong with them, and fundamentally, like, that kind of thing, you should shut down. I think there's like very few exceptions where someone will claim an identity. I'm like, yeah, right? But asexuality is not one of those things, So, ooh,
Yeah. The I think that is such an important such an important thing that you mentioned there, Darby. That having the discussion about asexuality opens us up to having a lot of other very important conversations. Conversations about romance and sexuality, and how sex and romance aren't necessarily the same thing. Conversations about gender roles and gender identities, and how society insists upon certain activities for us, and our particular cultural background, or our own micro societies have specific expectations of us as far as our sexuality. Like, I think that it's such an important way to start those conversations. Alyssa, you look like you're like,
no, I just yeah, my head is empty for the second. I will pass it to someone else.
If I could, I touch on something that Darby said, is that yes, that is something you mentioned about, like, people assuming that you're taking on asexuality simply to claim part of the queer banner, is something I dealt with because I came to it late. Because it's only been 5 years since I've understood that I'm demisexual. When I did start telling people, luckily it didn't happen with a lot of close friends, but it did happen with a lot of, like, internet friends who were just like, oh, you're jumping on a trend. And I'm like, look, there are lots of other trends that I could jump on if I wanted to be fashionable. It would not involve as much heartache as this would. So but it is something. And then sort of the opposite side, because I am, like, specifically demisexual, the idea that I do experience sexual attraction once there is that emotional and intellectual connection led to some friends becoming uncomfortable, because they automatically assumed that because we were friends and had an emotional and intellectual connection, that therefore I must be sexually attracted to them. And I'm like, no. that simply adds the possibility of sexual attraction to, like, my conversation tree. That doesn't mean that you will get to click on it.
Yep. It's that conversation again about, like, how, like, when people, I guess it still happens, but very common, when people are like, I'm bisexual, they're like, so you're into me? It's like, nah, dude, chill. Like,
No.
it just,
Yeah.
like, are you attracted to everyone, like that, like, because you're straight, you're attracted to everyone of the opposite gender? No, that's not how that works. So critical thinking, please. Like, just because I've come out does not mean I am into you specifically. In fact, it's very unattractive. Like,
yes, you have knocked yourself down in the standings.
Yeah.
If you're curious.
and since we run relationships like basketball
Yeah.
bracket.
Yeah,
exactly. You've moved down a bracket. You're in tier 3 now. Like, or what is it? Divisions? Is it divisions for, like, college sports? Like, yeah. You're now a D3 college tier.
Yeah, in Canada we have hockey, so you've knocked yourself from, like, a AAA league down to, like, a bantam.
Yeah, like the Toronto Maple Leafs level.
Yeah,
knocked it down to there.
Yeah, which is just sad, really.
Oh, I did it. I went there. Love you, Leafs. Love you, Toronto. Hey, So there were some great audience questions before we close. Really want to touch those questions, discuss them. The next one, a great audience question. What advice would you give to communities out there that want to support folks in the asexual community? So
Pay
I'll
us.
open that up to the
Please hire more than one ace person. Please,
Give us money.
I beg. Like that this actually just kind of this could be a broad conversation for literally every intersectionality you can think of. One person's experience does not mean the entire bracket. Please hire more people that are in those brackets, because you're never going to get the same exact experiences. People are going to look at things differently. People are going to look at intersectional experiences differently. People are going to look at ace experiences differently. People are going to look at queer experiences differently. There is just so much of a kaleidoscope of wonderful and dreadful, in some experiences, situations that people have been in, validating experiences, horrendous experiences, and putting one person in the seat and being like, this is the diversity hire. We have hired one ace person, so now we are ace. We are an ace positive. No, please. For the love of everything. You need more than one person's experience to be able to make something that is friendly towards that bracket. If you want good representation of queer issues, you need to make sure that there is way more than one queer person on your team, and more than one queer person of that specific identity, because their experiences will be different. That's my rant. we've all, it happens on one person has a rant for like every panel. Every part of the panel, I should say. That's mine. Please, more than one.
And to piggyback on that, actually have meaningful inclusion of those people in your conversations. Not to like harp on my college years too much, but I participated a lot in our queer societies, our queer programs, our queer groups on campus, but a huge issue that came up was that ace and aspec identities were being erased or actively pushed out by other people in the community. Verbally or visually, they would put ace people. We were on, God, I forgot what the name of the Cutie Pock was, like our queer trans like POC like group, and they had like, they're like, yeah, and we would love like ace people to be a part of this conversation, but then like they would push out in behind closed doors. It came out that they were talking about how ace people don't belong in the community and all of that. It was just like a lot of front facing like this, and inclusion to some, but then it was like, mind your place. Like, you don't actually, like, you're here, we have your group here, but you need to like watch yourself because you don't really it was like a pseudo, like, you get to kind of be here. And that was like it made it hard to want to participate in supporting those orgs, even though they were doing great work. Otherwise, it was like, but I don't really belong here. And I feel like the only way you accept me is because I am romantically attracted to women and to men and to other people, not because of my ace identity. And that was like a really hard time. So it's not only including lots of people, it's actually giving them equal space and equity at the table. Like, they're not just like, not just there, and you're not just including lots of them, you're giving equal voice and equal space. So that it sucks when it's not.
I want to piggyback off that just for one thing real quick. And stop collecting people like their trading cards. You're like, I have an ace, I have a queer, I have an Asian, I'm good now, right? No, we're not. Don't, if you do want to bring us in our space, let us in this space. Don't just like, well, I have these people now, I've collected them, I'm good. We're not Pokemon. If you're going to invite us, actually listen to us and work with us. We're not here to work for you.
life would be so much easier if we were. Like, we'd
Man,
have
I want to be a
whole, like,
Pokemon.
sheet
Bruh,
would tell us
I
what
would
we're good at, what we're bad at.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be
Yeah.
so easy.
I would live in the Pokemon world in a heartbeat. Like, not even. I would throw everything away to become a Pokemon trainer, like lickety splickety.
Yeah.
But
People
like,
gave the Pokemon movie so much crap, and I'm like, I want to live there. I will watch this movie 50 times in a row because I want it to be real.
let me in! Let me in! I want to have a Pokemon adventure.
I don't even feel like a trainer. I'm like that middle evolution of a Pokemon. Like I'm not the cute evolution, but I'm also not the powerful one. Like I'm somewhere in that awkward stage in the middle. You
I
know?
am
I
Kakuna.
related to the main guy. I was like, Kuma, oh shit! I would never be able to catch anything.
Yeah. And tagging off of what April said, and this is specifically to all the white guys in the audience, we and other marginalized identities are also not your shield. If you screw up, do not throw your ace friend out in front of you and say, but I couldn't have screwed up. I have an ace friend. Because that's not cool. It's also not true. You can screw up regardless of who you know. So, and you will screw up regardless of who you know. So learn to be okay with that, own it, and be better.
One thing that I would throw out there, I've kept myself mostly quiet as the moderator, but if you're looking to tell stories that represent asexuality well, you don't do it by saying there's no romance in my game. And I hear that all the time. From large swaths of the gaming community, there is no mention of sexuality. So now we're very ace friendly. No, you're not. You're actually doing the exact opposite. You are erasing ace people by not giving them the opportunity to validate their lived experiences in your game. You're taking away that entire opportunity from them. That is ace erasure. That's bad. If you're actively trying to support the ace community, allow romance and sexuality to be a part of your TTRPG in a tasteful, respectful way with boundaries established during a session 0.
Always make sure there's consent. I want to add that because I've had people find out my character's ace and then decide we're going to see how long it takes for us to roam. I'm like, no, that now feels gross. So always make sure there is consent with all the players.
So gross. Yeah, absolutely. So we had another topic, another question. This might be the last question we're able to get to before we outro. What role did fanfic play in validating or identifying your asexuality?
Mine's real fast. I don't read fanfic. I'm sorry.
Mine is also really quick. I don't read fanfic, but reading fiction actually helped me identify as specifically as demisexual on the asexual. Other demisexuals may have the same experience. A few that I've talked to have is that because characters in fiction, if they are strongly and well written, are by design meant to establish an emotional connection with you, it is possible to feel attraction to a fictional character that you would not necessarily feel for a person. And that is okay, and that is valid. And the example I use is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I don't even remember the actress's name. She plays Nurse Chapel. I have no interest in her personally, but I would definitely like to take Nurse Chapel out for a coffee. Like, so, that is something that helped, at least for me, sort of come to terms with and understand and accept my own demisexuality. So.
Yeah, so for me, I was not on Tumblr as a youth, but I think that fanfic sort of filled in that same space in that there's like some really good representations and some really bad representations, but regardless, it's sort of giving a lot of like different depictions and spaces to find yourself. So for me at least, it was like a sort of useful like, oh no, I can see myself reflected in this like completely random like side character for a fandom I don't actually know anything about. Like, great.
Anybody else?
I feel like my opinion's gonna get me bullied online, so you go first and I'll go after.
I want to hear it now. Tell us. No one has any more opinions at this moment.
Oh yeah, I'll wait for your.
Oh boy. Okay. All right. So I'm of. I need to make sure that I word this properly. I tried to jump into the fanfic hole when I was kind of discovering the idea of queer doesn't just mean gay and lesbian. Which I feel like is a stepping point for a lot of individuals. But one of the things that I very quickly realized is fanfiction can be just as harmful and detrimental to your self-identity as it can be helpful. Because it's very, very hard to, especially since fanfic is a lot of younger writers that are expressing themselves and trying to figure things out for themselves, which is good. That's a positive. But looking at that as if it, like looking at a character and the way that they act as if it is an honest to God 100% truth, then creates this painful dichotomy of you trying to discover yourself through someone who hasn't discovered themselves yet. And there's no way that someone can be able, there's no way that someone can communicate exactly what they are feeling, only that you can relate to them through some of the experiences that they have. And there's this trend that I noticed during kind of like that little mini foray of people looking at characters going, I can relate, and then taking that part and like locking it in and not developing anymore and not, discovering themselves anymore. Because they're like, oh, this character is Ace, this is how they act, that is how I need to act. And then that trait is then part of what makes that journey so difficult. Because all of a sudden you're having to unlearn your own personal bias that you've picked up through that. And that's not me trying to say, like, as I said, fanfic can be a fantastic way of expressing yourself and finding people who are going through the same thing and developing yourself. But there is also this side of just don't stop exploring, don't stop learning, don't stop developing just because you found a character that you like and that you want to be as comfortable as them, because the person who wrote it might not be, they might still be on their own journey, on their own personal journey of development and exploration. So yeah, just keep that open, keep it, keep exploring, keep learning, keep finding out exactly who you are. That turned very preachy towards the end there, but that is, I feel like it's important. Because yeah, I've seen a lot of good from fanfic, and I've also seen a lot of bad from fanfic.
So we're going to at this point begin wrapping up the conversation. We are getting toward the very end, and again, before we go, I did want to thank the producers and staff behind the scenes who did a really great job keeping this conversation moving for everybody. I would like to thank Robo Goblin, Ttrpg GIFs or GIFs, depending on how you choose to pronounce that. Would also like to thank this amazing group of panelists who volunteered their time to speak with you and took that emotional labor. They definitely deserve that praise. The best way to thank people is to follow them and support them. And so I would like to give everybody a chance to tell everybody out there where they can find you on social media and perhaps where they can go to support you. So we'll go reverse order this time, and we'll open it up with Brent. Brent, where can we find you?
Hi. You can find me on most social media as Dorklord Canada. Specifically, if you want to find the links to everywhere else I am, if you go to dorklordcanada.ca, that is my website. where I blog about gaming stuff and sometimes personal stuff, and just has links to everywhere else I am. So you can find me there.
And Ray, where can we find you?
You can find me over at Red Mage Ray on Twitter. I do TTRPG things in the space. I help co-run Friends Who Roll Dice, which is a group that we do a whole bunch of stuff for charity with. You can find me all over the place doing all sorts of things. But Twitter is usually the best place to find out what exactly is going on. And I try and support cool people doing cool things as much as I can. So, yeah, big thank you to all these folks for putting up with my ramblings. And of course, all the folks behind the scenes as well. Yeah.
Alyssa, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at a disaster queer, and I'm also in some various TTRPG actual play things, which you can also find on my Twitter.
Excellent. Darby, where can we find you?
Hello. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Tumblr, all those places. Mostly Twitter still. Because I picked one social media that I was gonna like focus on. It was Twitter. For better or for worse, I am there. Probably riding until it dies. So you can find me on Twitter, also Twitch. But yeah, I am also on top of just existing. I am the community manager for TTRPG, spelled TEATRPG. I have to write this down because I was gonna forget. So you can catch me behind the scenes there. Also, you can find me on Neon Lights Roleplay every other Wednesday playing in Stardust Ghosts. It's a Mechton Zero game. So yeah, I'm you can hire me for stuff. Yes, I will do things. There you go.
And April, where can we find you?
Hi, I'm April. You can find me all over the internet. One day I'll learn how to say that sentence as April Raygun. I do a lot of things. Follow me. My links are there. More importantly, I want to kind of push in March 9th through the 12th over on D&D Jordan Lee's channel. We're going to do a Games for Change for Stop AAP I Hate, because we're Asian and you should stop hating us. We didn't do anything wrong. So yeah, we're going to do charity for that. So we'll be announcing casts and DMs very soon. And just follow me online for everything else. Oh, and if you're not ace and you're straight, you owe us all $1. Because pay us.
Yep, it definitely. That money, being able to put food in our mouths matters, right? My name is Connor. My pronouns are he, him. I would love it to continue that conversation with you online. You can follow me at Twitter, the Healer DM. You could also find me online at my website, thehealerdm.card with 2Rs.com. There are links on how you can support the work that I do, works that I've written. You can follow ways to hire me as a DM. In addition, I would like to point out that there's some great public-facing work out there with groups such as the Word Refinery, bringing voice to people who are underrepresented in writing communities. I'm involved with them. thewordrefinery.org is their website. Also consider supporting d8summit.org, a gamer-facing charity that raises money for local causes. There's an event coming up in April. We're raising money for the homeless, as well as a PFLAG chapter in a community that is being ravaged by book banning controversy, and an attempt to raise not only the queer community from there, but also putting our youth seriously at risk. They need the help. I want to turn it over to everybody. I want to thank all of you for being here. Next up is the Black and Asexual panel, 4 p.m. Pacific, with Farron, Ambrose, Raven, Basil, Jason, Devalking Jacob as the moderator. We will be rating Wreck-It Raven, so get ready, y'all. And thank you so much. Please leave with love.
I think it's pronounced Duval.